My name is Charlotte Russell, and I'm 30 years old. Last Sunday morning, I was sipping coffee in my Little Rock apartment when my phone pinged with a voice memo from my parents. It wasn't meant for me, it was for my sister. What I heard made my heart stop. They called me eccentric, said my career was a dead-end hobby, and claimed no one would ever marry someone like her. Me, their own daughter. I sat there stunned as their words sank in. My whole life, I thought they were my biggest supporters, but this was betrayal plain and simple. I couldn't unhear it, and I wasn't going to let it slide. That moment sparked a plan, a bold, calculated move to confront them in a way they'd never forget. I'm not talking about a quiet family talk. No, I had something bigger in mind, something that would turn their world upside down just like they did mine. What did I do? Stick around to find out how I made them face the truth in front of everyone who mattered. If this story struck a chord with you the way it did with me, share your thoughts in the comments below. Growing up in Little Rock, I thought my parents were my biggest supporters. My dad Edward was a banker who retired a few years ago, always full of advice about stability. My mom Pamela sells real estate, constantly networking and charming clients. Then there's my sister Paige, 2 years younger, working in media, and always the golden child in their eyes. We were close, or so I believed. Family dinners, holidays, you name it. We did it together. I'd go out of my way to help them, like when I planned Dad's 50th birthday party for free, turning our backyard into a classy venue with string lights and a live band. Everyone raved about it. I even covered some of Mom's business expenses when her deals fell through last year, wiring her a few $1,000s without a second thought. Paige's promotion party, I handled that too, designing custom invites and booking a rooftop venue. It was my way of showing love, using my skills as an event planner to make them proud. But that voice memo changed everything. I'd heard it Sunday, but by Monday I was still reeling. It was Mom's voice, first sharp and dismissive, talking to my sister. "Charlotte's so eccentric," she said, like it was a flaw. "Her little events business is so unstable. She's never going to settle down. No one would marry someone like her." Dad chimed in, his tone cold. "Paige, you're the one we're proud of. You've got a real career. Charlotte's just floundering. Floundering me." The words hit like a punch. They weren't just talking about my job, they were tearing down my entire life. I'd spent years building my company, pouring my heart into every detail, and they thought it was a hobby. I'd supported them, celebrated them, and this was what they said behind my back. To Paige, of all people, who'd smiled at me during those family dinners, like nothing was wrong. I played the memo again, hoping I'd misheard. Nope. Every word was clear. Mom went on about how Paige's media job was prestigious, how she was going places. Dad even laughed, saying I'd probably end up asking them for money someday. The irony stung. I'd been the one helping them. I thought back to all the times I'd stayed up late planning their events, never asking for a dime. Like when I organized a charity gala for Mom's real estate group, coordinating every vendor to make her look good. Or when Paige needed a last-minute venue for her company's launch event, and I pulled strings to get her a spot at a sold-out hotel. I'd done it because I loved them, because family was supposed to have each other's backs. But they didn't have mine. The worst part: they weren't just wrong, they were clueless. They didn't know me at all. My business wasn't some side hustle, it was a powerhouse. I wasn't the eccentric mess they painted me as. And the "no one would marry her" jab, that cut deep, especially since I was engaged to someone who'd prove them wrong in every way. But they didn't know that either. All those years of support, all the sacrifices, and they thought I was a failure. I felt my chest tighten, a mix of anger and heartbreak. I wanted to call them, scream, demand answers. Why would they say this? Why to Paige? Had she agreed with them? I didn't know, but the thought of her nodding along made my stomach churn. I sat there staring at my phone, the memo still open. I could have confronted them right then, but something stopped me. This wasn't just about hurt feelings, it was about them building a lie about me, maybe even to the rest of the family. I needed to know how far this went. Were they telling everyone I was a mess? Was Paige in on it? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just let this go. I wasn't going to cry or beg for their approval. No, I was going to show them exactly who I was and make them face the truth in a way they couldn't ignore. That memo wasn't just a betrayal, it was the start of something bigger. I was done being their punching bag. The next morning, I sat in my home office replaying their words. I couldn't stop thinking about how wrong they were. I wasn't some struggling dreamer. I ran a company, Russell Events, that pulled in $3,500,000 a year. $3,500,000. Let that sink in. I'd started it from scratch, turning my knack for details into a powerhouse that planned high-profile events for corporations across the country. Last year alone, I organized a national tech conference in Dallas for a Fortune 500 company, coordinating 500 vendors and a guest list of thousands. I'd flown to New York to manage a charity gala for a retail giant, pulling it off without a hitch. My team of 20 employees worked out of a sleek office in Little Rock, and our reputation was ironclad. Clients like Walmart, headquartered right here in Arkansas, trusted me to deliver flawless events. That's not a hobby, that's a legacy. But it wasn't just my career they got wrong. I lived in a penthouse apartment in downtown Little Rock, a place with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Arkansas River. I'd bought it cash 2 years ago. No mortgage, no debt. And that line about no one would marry me, that stung the most because I was engaged to Daniel Wright, my fiancé, a man who'd built his own tech startup from the ground up. Daniel wasn't just successful, he was a visionary, the kind of person who turned ideas into million-dollar deals. We'd met at a networking event I planned 3 years ago, hit it off over shared ambitions, and got engaged last summer. He was my partner in every sense, always pushing me to aim higher. We'd spent evenings mapping out our future, from building a home to traveling the world. To think my parents believed I was some lonely oddball was almost laughable if it didn't hurt so much. The more I thought about their words, the clearer it became. They'd built a whole narrative about me. In their minds, I was the daughter who needed fixing, while Paige, my sister, was the one to emulate. They thought I was floundering, that I'd come crawling to them for help, that Paige was the one going places. It was like they'd erased everything I'd achieved. I remembered the times they'd asked about my work, their questions laced with pity. "How's your little business doing?" Mom would say, her smile tight. Dad would nod, suggesting I consider a real job like Paige's media gig. I'd brushed it off as concern, but now I saw it for what it was: condescension. They'd taken my success and twisted it into failure, probably telling the whole family I was barely scraping by. I wanted to storm into their house and set the record straight. I could picture it, walking in, listing my clients, showing them my bank statements, introducing Daniel. But that wouldn't be enough. They'd brush it off, make excuses, or worse, double down. No, I needed something bigger, something that would force them to see me, not their version of me, but the real Charlotte Russell. I wasn't going to scream or beg for their respect. I was going to show them step by step in a way that would hit harder than any argument. My anger wasn't just about their words. It was about years of being underestimated, of giving them everything, while they gave me nothing but judgment. I started thinking about how to turn this around, how to make them face the truth in front of everyone who'd bought their lies. This wasn't about proving them wrong, it was about proving myself right. A couple of weeks later, I started piecing together their lies. The sting of my parents' words hadn't faded, but I'd turned it into fuel. I wasn't going to let their false narrative define me. Instead, I mapped out a plan, 3 precise phases to show them who I really was. Phase 1, gather information to see how far their story had spread. Phase 2, play the failing daughter they thought I was. Phase 3, expose the truth at my sister's engagement party, where they'd have no choice but to face it. This wasn't about shouting matches or private arguments. I wanted a moment that would hit them hard in front of everyone who'd heard their version of me. I grabbed a notebook and started jotting down every step, every detail like I was planning one of my corporate events. Precision was my strength, and I'd use it to flip their story upside down. My first move was to talk to my best friend, Courtney Lane. Courtney's been my rock since college, always in my corner, and she works with me at Russell events. I called her up and spilled everything. They think I'm a mess, I told her, pacing my office. They're telling Paige I'm some charity case who'll never get her life together. Courtney didn't miss a beat. They're blind, she said. You've built an empire and they're too stuck in their own heads to see it. You need to show them up big time. Her words lit a fire in me. She wasn't just encouraging me, she was pushing me to take control. We brainstormed over coffee and she suggested I dig deeper into what my parents were saying behind my back. Talk to your family, she said. Find out who else they've fed this nonsense to. That was exactly what I needed to hear. Next, I reached out to my Aunt Gloria Dunn. Gloria runs a boutique in Little Rock, always dressed to impress and quick to share gossip. I drove to her shop on a quiet Tuesday, pretending I just wanted to catch up. Over tea, I steered the conversation to family. So how's everyone been? I asked, keeping it casual. Gloria sighed, her tone sympathetic. Your mom's worried about you, Charlotte. Says you're struggling with that events thing, barely making ends meet. My jaw tightened, but I played along. Oh, really? What else did she say? Gloria hesitated, then admitted Mom had told her I was too quirky to settle down, that I needed to get serious like Paige. It was like hearing the voice memo all over again, but now I knew it wasn't just a one-off rant. They were spreading this lie to the family, painting me as a failure. I wasn't done. I called my cousin Dylan Dunn, Gloria's son. Dylan's 25, a tech guy who's always glued to his laptop. We met at a diner and I got straight to the point. Dylan, has Mom or Dad said anything about me lately? He looked uncomfortable, stirring his coffee. Yeah, they mentioned you're having a tough time, he said. Like financially and stuff. Dad said you might need a loan soon. That was it. Confirmation their story had spread beyond Paige. I pressed him, keeping my voice steady. Did they say anything about my personal life? Dylan nodded. They think you're kind of on your own. You know, not dating anyone serious. I forced a smile, hiding the fury building inside. They'd built an entire myth about me, and my own cousin believed it. Every conversation was another piece of the puzzle. I wrote it all down: Gloria's pity, Dylan's awkward admissions, Courtney's advice. Each note was a weapon for phase 3. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. My parents thought they could rewrite my life, but I'd show them the truth. Not with tears or arguments, but with a plan that would leave them speechless. I started thinking about Paige's engagement party, how it could be the perfect stage. I'd be there helping with the planning, and they'd never see it coming. This wasn't about hurting them, it was about reclaiming my story. A month into my plan, I started acting like the daughter they described. I'd laid out my strategy, and now it was time for phase 2, convincing Mom and Dad I was the struggling mess they believed me to be. It wasn't easy to play that role, but I was committed. I needed them to double down on their story so I could capture it all. My first step was to make a call I never thought I'd make. I dialed Mom's number, my voice shaky on purpose. Hey Mom, things have been tight lately, I said, swallowing hard to sell it. Could I borrow $50 for groceries? There was a pause, then her tone shifted to that familiar mix of pity and superiority. Oh, Charlotte, I knew this was coming, she said. You can't keep up with that little business of yours. We'll send the money, but you really need to think about a stable job. I gritted my teeth, forcing a weak thanks, Mom, before hanging up. I hit record on my phone first. Arkansas law allows single-party consent, so I was in the clear. Dad was next. I called him the same day, keeping up the act. Dad, I'm short on cash, I admitted, letting my voice crack. Just need $50 to get by. He didn't even hesitate. "This is why we told you to get a real career," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're too old to be chasing dreams. Look at your sister, she's got it figured out." I mumbled something about trying harder, my stomach twisting as I recorded every word. Their responses were exactly what I'd expected, smug, judgmental, like they'd been waiting for me to fail. Each call was a piece of evidence, another nail in the coffin of their false narrative. I saved the recordings in a secure folder labeled and dated, knowing they'd play a big role later. To make their story stick, I started pulling back from family events. There was a barbecue at my parents' house the next weekend, a regular thing where everyone would gather. I texted Paige saying, "Sorry, work's been stressful, can't make it." She replied with a quick, "Hope you're okay," but I could tell she bought it. Mom called a few days later inviting me to a cousin's baby shower. I'm swamped with deadlines, I lied, keeping my tone heavy. "Maybe next time." She sighed like she was disappointed but not surprised. "You're working too hard for so little," she said. "You should take a break and rethink your priorities." I recorded that too, my jaw tight as I played along. Every excuse I gave fed their idea that I was struggling, that my life was falling apart. It was working. They were eating it up. Courtney was my anchor through this. I met her at a cafe in Little Rock, needing to vent. "I hate pretending to be this pathetic version of myself," I told her, stirring my coffee. "It's like I'm betraying everything I've built." Courtney leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "You're not betraying anything," she said. "You're playing their game better than they are. Stay focused, this is going to be worth it." She reminded me why I was doing this, not just to prove them wrong, but to take back my truth. We went over my notes, the recordings, the timeline. "You've got this," she said, squeezing my hand. "When the time comes, they won't know what hit them." Her confidence kept me grounded, pushing me to stick to the plan even when it felt like I was losing a piece of myself. Every step was calculated. I wasn't just playing a part. I was building a case. The recordings, the skipped events, the way I let Mom and Dad think they were right, it was all leading to the moment when I'd turn their words against them. I wasn't going to let their lies define me anymore. I was setting the stage for something they'd never see coming, and I was ready to make it count. As Paige's engagement party drew closer, my plan came together. I'd been playing the struggling daughter for weeks, and now it was time to set the stage for Phase 3, the big reveal. My sister's party was the perfect opportunity, and I offered to handle the planning for free, just like I always did. I designed custom invitations for Paige's event, elegant cards, with gold foil accents that screamed sophistication. I created signage for the venue, a 5-star hotel in downtown Little Rock, with sleek, modern fonts that matched the upscale vibe. The decorations were my masterpiece, cascading floral arrangements, crystal chandeliers, and a photo backdrop that would steal the show. Every detail was flawless, the kind of work that made my company a go-to for corporate giants. I poured my expertise into it, knowing Mom and Dad would see it and still find a way to dismiss me. Sure enough, they did. A week before the party, I met them at their house to show off the designs. I spread the invitations and signage mock-ups on their dining table, expecting at least a nod of approval. Instead, Mom pursed her lips. "These are cute, Charlotte, but a bit amateurish, don't you think?" she said, glancing at Paige. Dad nodded, adding, "It's nice you're trying, but this isn't exactly professional quality." Paige stood there silent, her eyes darting between us. I swallowed my anger, forcing a smile. "I'll tweak them," I said, playing along with their narrative. Inside, I was seething. My work had been featured in industry blogs, praised by CEOs, and here they were calling it amateurish in front of my sister. I jotted their comments in my notebook later, another piece of evidence for the moment I'd been building toward. While they underestimated me, I was working on something bigger. I reached out to a contact at Arkansas Life, a local magazine that covers business and culture. I'd worked with their editor, Sarah Mitchell, on a charity event last year, and she'd been impressed with my company's growth. I pitched her a feature on Russell events, framing it as a story of a Little Rock entrepreneur beating the odds. "We'd love to highlight you," Sarah said over the phone. "Your success is inspiring." I asked her to time the article's release for the morning after Paige's party, ensuring it would hit newsstands when my family least expected it. The article would detail my $3,500,000 business, my high-profile clients, and my journey from a small startup to a regional powerhouse. It was the kind of validation my parents couldn't ignore, and I made sure it was locked in. Back at my office, I started crafting my speech for the party. This wasn't going to be a toast to Paige, it was going to be my moment. I wrote carefully, choosing words that would cut through their assumptions without sounding bitter. I wanted to lay out the truth. My success, my independence, my life they'd misjudged. I practiced in front of a mirror, keeping my tone calm but firm, making sure every sentence landed with impact. Then came the recordings. I compiled the audio from my calls with Mom and Dad, the ones where they'd lectured me about stable jobs and real careers. I edited them into a short, powerful clip, just enough to show their words without dragging it out. I tested it on my laptop, imagining their faces when it played in front of their friends and family. Everything was falling into place, and I felt a surge of confidence. This wasn't just about proving them wrong, it was about taking back my story in a way they'd never forget. The night of Paige's engagement party, I stepped up to the microphone. The ballroom of the Little Rock Marriott was buzzing with over 100 guests, family, friends, and Paige's colleagues surrounded by the decorations I'd designed for free. The gold foil invitations, the floral arrangements cascading from every table, the sleek signage directing guests to the photo backdrop. It was all my work, a testament to my skill. But I wasn't here to celebrate Paige. I was here to set the record straight. My heart pounded as I tapped the mic, the room falling silent. I took a deep breath, my speech memorized, my plan ready to unfold. This was the moment I'd been building toward for months. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady, "I want to share something before we toast my sister." I held up my phone connected to the venue's sound system. My parents sent me a voice memo by mistake a few months ago, meant for Paige. Let's hear what they really think of me. I pressed play, and Mom's voice filled the room, sharp and cutting. "Charlotte's so eccentric. Her little events business is so unstable. No one would marry someone like her." Then Dad. "She's floundering. Paige, you're the one we're proud of." The crowd gasped, whispers rippling through the room. I stopped the clip, letting the words hang in the air. Mom's face went pale. Dad froze his glass halfway to his lips. Paige stared at the floor, her cheeks flushed. I didn't stop there. "Since they mentioned my personal life," I said, turning to the side, "I'd like you to meet my fiancé, Daniel Wright." Daniel stepped forward, tall and confident, his tech startup a household name in Arkansas. The crowd murmured some clapping as he waved. "Daniel's been my partner for years," I continued, "and we're building a future together. So much for no one would marry me." I paused, letting that sink in. As for my career, I run Russell Events, a company that brings in $3,500,000 a year. I've planned events for Fortune 500 companies, including the very decorations you see tonight. Gold foil invites, floral displays, signage, all done for free, out of love for my sister. I gestured to the room, my voice rising. These amateurish designs, as my parents called them, are the work of a team that's earned praise from CEOs and industry leaders. But my parents, they told you I was struggling, that I needed Paige to lead me. They built a lie, and I'm done letting it stand. The room was dead silent now, every eye on me. Mom tried to speak, her voice shaking. "Charlotte, we didn't mean," I cut her off. "You meant every word I said. You spread it to the family, to Aunt Gloria, to Dylan, to anyone who'd listen. But tonight, you see the truth." The crowd was stunned, some nodding, others whispering. Paige looked like she wanted to disappear, her hands twisting in her lap. Dad's face was red, his usual confidence gone. I felt a surge of satisfaction, not joy, but justice. I'd laid bare their hypocrisy, and there was no going back. I hope you enjoy the party, I said, my tone final. I put my heart into it like I always have for this family. I set the mic down, grabbed Daniel's hand, and walked out. The murmurs followed us, but I didn't look back. I'd said what I needed to say, and the weight of their lies was off my shoulders. 3 months after the party, my life was completely different. Walking out of that ballroom hand in hand with Daniel, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth was out, and I was done carrying the weight of my parents' lies. I made a choice that night: no more contact with Edward and Pamela. They tried reaching out, phone calls, texts, even a letter mailed to my office, but I didn't respond. Their voicemails were full of apologies, claims they didn't mean it that way, but I'd heard enough. I blocked their numbers and returned the letter unopened. This wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about protecting my peace. I'd spent too long trying to earn their approval, and I was finally free of that burden. The fallout for Edward and Pamela was swift. Aunt Gloria called me a week after the party, her voice heavy with disbelief. "They've lost everyone's respect," she said. "No one in the family trusts them anymore." Cousins, uncles, even their close friends distanced themselves, stunned by how they'd misrepresented me. Dylan texted me, admitting he felt betrayed by their stories. "I had no idea you were doing so well," he wrote. "They made it sound like you were falling apart." Their credibility was shot, and they had no one to blame but themselves. I didn't revel in their isolation, but I couldn't deny it felt just. They'd built a narrative to tear me down, and now it had collapsed on them. My career, on the other hand, was soaring. The Arkansas Life article hit newsstands the morning after the party, just as planned, titled "Charlotte Russell, Little Rock's Event Powerhouse." It detailed my journey, my $3,500,000 business, and my work with top-tier clients like Walmart. The response was overwhelming. Within days, my inbox was flooded with inquiries from new clients, corporations, nonprofits, even a tech startup in Bentonville. I signed 3 major contracts that month alone, including a national retailer's annual gala. My team at Russell Events had to expand, hiring 5 new staff to keep up. The article didn't just validate my success, it opened doors I hadn't even knocked on yet. I felt unstoppable, like every step I'd taken had led to this moment. Paige reached out a month later asking to meet. I agreed, but only at a neutral spot, a quiet diner in downtown Little Rock. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her coffee mug. I didn't know they were saying those things. She said, her voice soft. "I'm sorry, Charlotte. Can we fix this?" I leaned back, studying her. Part of me wanted to believe she meant it, but I couldn't ignore how she'd stayed silent at the party, letting their lies linger. "Paige, I said I love you, but I'm done with relationships that make me feel small. I need to focus on people who lift me up." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but I stood firm. Self-respect wasn't negotiable, not even for family. I wished her well, paid for my coffee, and left. We haven't spoken since. Looking back, I learned something profound through all this. Standing up for yourself isn't just about calling out lies, it's about refusing to let anyone, even family, define your worth. I spent years trying to please Edward and Pamela, hoping they'd see me for who I was. But their judgment wasn't about me, it was about their own biases. Cutting them out wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I found strength in choosing myself, in building a life that reflects my truth. If you're watching this and you've ever felt dismissed or underestimated, know this: you don't have to accept it. You have the power to stand tall, to walk away from toxicity, and to create a life that's yours. Share your story in the comments below, and let's talk about it. What would you have done in my shoes?